Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Monastery, the open bar of the internet, the world's greatest shit show, and the place where we, the good brothers and sisters of this most holy of temples, seek enlightenment through the drunkest, craziest, and most batshit ways possible. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me and with us, we have the man who is getting his after the longest fucking season of Valley of the Judge that we've ever done. and of course, with me as always to help with what he's got coming, the man of 1,000 runes, the CEO of Zadare Enterprises, and the bane of my fucking existence, good brother Xanatrix.
Zadare Enterprises would like to remind you that when we bane everybody equally. Not only will these two entrepreneurs of Successor Games be getting theirs, but we'll be doing it in a way that the monk will regret.
Probably.
I mean, I have plenty of puns on board, monk.
Yeah, and it's not like between you and Ulm, I don't need to come up with my own puns because you'll have plenty of them.
Don't forget Neff.
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
Or the three Punsketeers. You could, but because our pun's on board, you could almost say that our puns are planet bound at this point.
Yeah, so I will admit some of the long ass season with Planet Bound was partially our fault. On the other, only insofar as the 3-in-1 rule.
Yeah. So that we don't burn out and die.
I am glad that my bullying regarding bookmarks actually took some root. As well as the fact that, because I remember when I first talked with you, you were insistent on not doing this in PDF form.
Yeah, we were, and Travis can speak to this too. Our whole approach to this thing called a hardcore game was to have people sit around the table with a book in hand and play the game. They could play it digitally if they wanted to, meaning if they could play it over the internet if they wanted to, but we wanted that hardbound classic feel of a role-playing game that we experienced, because that's that was experiential for us. And then there was a journey after that. And so me, meaning this is Jeremy speaking, we're both Travis and Jeremy here. My life became the world's greatest shit show. Is what happened. And then in the aftermath of that, our print run became inaccessible to us. So we took a hard look at how we were going to present this hardcore game to our audience, and we chose the only logical conclusion, which was to meet us where we were, and where we were was to do print on demand and then release a digital version of the game. But that didn't change us. That didn't stop us from wanting to do something hardcore, for sure. So yes, to your point, Monk, the bookmark thing. So the digital version included extensive bookmarks, even more so in the conspectus for the die strength system, because we knew RMs were going to want to be clicking around that thing. And we wanted it to be easy for them. There's a links along, and then we chose to get voice performance actors to do Kyron and Orthan's excerpts. We did a couple other experts. You'll hear Jeremy Jack doing voices on there, and then the glossary is entirely, because no matter what, Monk was going to say aditum no matter what. So we were like, even though we had guides to how you're supposed to say these words, they didn't always work, and we realized that during the review. So we got a voice actor to actually say the words on that digital edition.
Yeah.
Yep. I corrected him nearly every episode on aditum.
Yeah, what I'm reminded of is The Viking
You know, and-
Verse guys not too long ago did a book called Old Norse for Modern Times, which was basically taking common phrases and giving them a rough equivalent in Old Norse. I have to say rough equivalent because obviously when you're dealing with ancient languages, there's going to be some guesswork because some vowels, consonants, or even just the sound of certain words, there isn't a historical equivalent.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we actually know that Old Norse and modern Icelandic are nearly identical in sound.
Yeah. Depending on the language, it's trickier than some. I've talked about how AB Alpha Beta a long time ago had done a Latin dub of the Biggest Dickus routine from Monty Python,
Can you
and
imagine?
they settled on Erecto Muto because there's no Latin equivalent. And that was after going through like 5 different variants that just didn't, because they needed one that was close enough but still sounded like it would fit in the bit to the spirit of the bit. And Erecto Muto was the one that they eventually settled on. It wasn't the best one, it was just the least bad. Then again, we're dealing with a Biggest Dickus joke, so what counts as good is going to be subjective. But
So yeah, we did a digital edition and we made it hardcore. And the digital edition includes 7 of the sheets, but fillable versions. We did those hardcore too. You know, you can tab through them. We made them super easy to use. We did, instead of some of the stuff that was included that you guys didn't review in the directory, we really took a hard look at, because the book was so large as it was, and we decided to separate some of that stuff out and create a free publication for people that right now is at 60 pages, but we'll update it as we go along. We call it Cannon Fodder, and that comes free with the digital edition of the game. And it's the stuff like the timeline, and it's the full glossary that has some additional illustrations in it. It's got the fauna that were original book and all of their specs.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I think we should bring up, because this is something that I remember you bringing up this to me during some of the phone conversations and some of the back and forth we had in the process of this thing going down. But at some point in the span of time that you and I have known each other, you started shifting into emphasizing hardcore in the marketing and presentation of the game, using it in almost every single update on the Kickstarter for months, and using it in a lot of the tweets.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I'd like you to kind of go down to the history of what made you start to use that whole hardcore games for hardcore gamers part as part of the presentation.
Sure. So that actually came, and Travis can speak to some of the history of this, because that came from conversations that Travis and I were having about the game that we were creating. So Planetbound, the game that we played as young men throughout then into our adult lives, our presentation of that in a commercial version, we wanted it to be in every aspect of what we consider the portions of a role-playing game, from and I'll use the colloquial terms of it, from the fluff, meaning the premise and the story, to the crunch, the rules and the mechanics, the chrome, the design and look, and to the role-playing. We wanted to have all 4 parts of it, because we would see a lot of books out there that would have one or the other, or maybe a couple of those, but nobody was hitting all 4 in an excellent way. And we considered that if a game could hit all 4 of those, that's a hardcore game. Like, it is a thoroughly thought through game on every single level of what we think a role-playing game is. And so when we realized that that's what we were doing with Planetbound, the initial drive was, we make that type of game. We make hardcore games for hardcore gamers. And then we really thought about it, and we're like, we do make hardcore games. That's accurate. And Planetbound is a hardcore game, but not just for hardcore gamers. Planetbound is a hardcore game, but that doesn't mean it's inaccessible to non-hardcore gamers. You guys can tell us how you feel. You guys did the review on it. Do you think that the game is inaccessible for anybody to be able to learn it? We didn't think so, so we thought we dropped the for hardcore gamers conversation. We just said we make hardcore games. That's just how that's how it is. Excellence on every level of gaming.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that you make hardcore games for rules lawyers.
So you say that one more time?
Hardcore games for rules lawyers.
For rules lawyers. Awesome.
Because while the game is completely accessible, everything's boiled down to a way anybody could understand it. There are a lot of rules, which is why you had the suggestion of splitting a GM into two people, a GM and an RM. RM being the rules master or role master or whatever you might want to call it.
You can't call it role master. Iron Crown's going to sue us.
Different role, different master. In fact, you know what? I'll change it. I will change it, Monk. It's the role maestro.
Oh.
Okay, that I'm willing to go with.
You know what? Here we go. But
yeah, us deciding to. So that was part of the hardcore aspect for sure. Is us deciding to add a rule master. And Trav and I came to this, and when it hit us, and we hit that was Travis's role. Like we've had questions about it. So you want to talk about what the whole rule master thing is in the game?
Yeah, I mean the development of it was just kind of a throwback to the way we used to game when we were
that's true.
Growing up and coming up. Jer would GM Planetbound for everybody in the group and stuff, and I was familiar with not only kind of the established rule system that we were using, but all the homebrewing we had done to it. I was pretty familiar with it, so
very familiar with it.
Jared would be running the game and stuff, and sometimes he would be like, "Oh man, what was this again?" Or how do? And so I would be, I'd rattle it off, or I'd grab whatever we needed to reference it, and it got to the point that I'd try to kind of head that off and anticipate that a little bit. And as we were developing Planetbound and the mechanics and everything, we were talking about how, like you had mentioned, Zen, like it was, it's getting a little, not rules heavy, but rules, I don't know, complicated. Maybe not complicated. Might be a bit much too.
There's
Thorough.
Definitely, a thoroughness. There's a lot of detail. It's rule dense. For one,
rules dense. Thank you. That's a good way to describe it.
There is, for people who may be more familiar with the surface level systems you come into contact with when you come into the hobby, not just the rules, the world's most litigious game, but also games like anything from White Wolf's Old World of Darkness or Exalted, or things like Shadowrun. The names that are, while not the biggest, are still fairly big, and lots of people run into them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Compared to most of those games, your rules are dense, and there is more crunch to them. But the crunch isn't bad. That's one thing we always tried to emphasize was more crunch does not mean bad game. More crunch, it's just like anything to taste. If you like crunchier things or less crunchy things, that's all entirely up to your play group.
Mm-hmm.
It's really like the big one I always had to get is it's rules dense. It's like a really good tiramisu.
Yes,
nice. Yeah,
or a pint of Guinness.
He makes that joke every time.
And as it became that, then Trav really.
Yeah, well, I actually remember we were having the discussion. Jeremy was over at my house, and we were talking about everything, and we were under development still and putting stuff together. And I don't know how we came upon it, but it was a pretty organic thing when all of a sudden we're just like, oh, well, maybe if we just had, it would be really cool to have somebody that just did the rules. And it was like, yeah, kind of like we used to do when we were coming and we started kind of fleshing the idea out, and we were both, I don't know, it's kind of like an epiphany moment for both of us. We're like, holy smokes, like this is probably the way we should do this. Like this really worked well for us in the past. Like what if we put that in as
and
yeah, we just kind of went with it.
Yeah. And the big reason why we took the approach we did with how we assessed the rules is Zen and I have seen a lot of reviewers. In fact, down the road, I plan on doing a whole stream just talking about the review styles that we've developed, because a lot of it is in response to some of the pitfalls we see with other reviewers. And one of the big ones is this idea that there's some rigid standard when it comes to RPGs, and that it isn't 90% context. Which is why saying that a game is, for instance, and I'm not calling anybody out, saying that a game is too crunchy might sound snappy on paper, but it doesn't. But the problem is what can be considered too crunchy can be a lot of things.
And again, like I said, it's to taste. It's a completely subjective measure, because for some people, the world's most litigious role-playing game is too crunchy.
Yeah.
And I would consider it crunch medium light.
Yeah.
Well, it is developed by a group of people who are very mid, so.
No, that's a good point that you're bringing up there. We've encountered that a little bit actually in discussions about kind of the RM role. And recently somebody had, asked kind of point blank, well, why? Like, what's in it for the RM? Like, is there something, more incentivizing for this person to assume this role at the table? And my response to that,
paid for it.
And my response to that is akin to yours, Zan, where it's like, well, it's to taste, man. Like, for me and the way I game, it's fantastic. Like, I would put running and being a part of the game as the rule master right up there with playing and right up there with GMing. They all have their nuance. They all have the cool stuff about them, and I feel that way about RMing. I enjoy it. It's cool. Like, it's fun for me to do. I like doing it. Is it going to be for everybody? No. Just like being a GM isn't for everybody, or just like playing isn't for everybody. There's cats out there that just like to GM, or cats out there that just like to play. So, but it's been interesting. It's definitely been like a talking point for a lot of people, and I guess it's good if we get them talking. I mean, that's fantastic. But a lot of people, it kind of short circuits them for a minute and just like, wait, what? Well, why and who and what? It's been kind of interesting, but
and then the people that have played with us then have gone, oh, wow, that's why, and this is so smooth.
Well, and the big thing is that one, if people are talking about it, it means eyes are on game, which is always a good thing.
Absolutely.
But two, there are going to be game masters out there like myself, who can do both in parallel processing in their heads pretty easily.
Yeah.
So like you said, to taste. So what's it for anyone to be a rules master? Well, some people will want to have that other person on hand, especially if they're running bigger groups. There is a point where about 6 players, 7 is the most I can manage on my own before I start feeling uncomfortable. Yeah. And so once I go over 7 players, depending on the game I'm playing, I'll be like, yo, I need another GM to help me out to help with keeping game flow and keeping focus. And that's what your rules master role essentially does from the get-go, is it splits off those things so that the flow can continue, which that's good, because that means the flow is better than what's in the book.
Yeah.
With rules dense, so with a rules master and a game master, your game flows like water down the river from a mountain. The info in your book flows like molasses in New York in the middle of winter.
Off a skyscraper, though?
I don't know about off a skyscraper. This might just be what's going to ground. And it's still taking hours.
Well,
once it gets there, sure, it's great. But there's a lot. There's a lot.
It is that dense. And the one thing about that was so awesome about your review is it is so dense, but we set up a system that you guys often commented was crunch up front, meaning the crunch was done before an actual roll took place. Crunch didn't take place after a roll took place, except for damage. And Monk was the one to pretty significantly point that out. And boy, that did a number on Travis.
Yeah, congratulations there, Brother Monk. You absolutely convicted me with those words when you said, man, everything else is crunch up front except for damage. And then
Monk said that, and then I pointed out that all of your tables for damage looked like shit.
Right. That's right.
Yes,
Yes,
yeah.
I do remember going, am I going to have to look 2 inches away from my damn monitor with some of these charts?
Right. And I mean, to our boon, truly, you guys' comments and your
Yeah.
recommendations and you're pointing that out and calling that out. I mean, it called us to the carpet, and it really made us try to step this up and make it what it needed to be. So hats off to both of you, gentlemen.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys truly made our product a better game.
Yeah. Now it's entirely crunch up front. We can say it.
Yeah. And the big reason I was so harsh on some of those charts is because I was still operating under the assumption that this was going to be a printed version first, and text
Right.
that small was going to create a problem. Now, the PDF is not as much of a problem because,
No.
you can zoom
You can
in,
zoom
and,
in.
and all that.
Yeah.
You can't really zoom in on a book. And
Yeah.
we're
Well, yeah.
a few centuries out from being able to do the whole stop enhance like in Blade Runner.
Right.
No,
Right.
you can zoom in on a book, Monk. I went to school with a kid who is an albino and thus was legally blind. They had to give him what was essentially an overhead projector for his desk so he could look at his books.
Wow.
And what are the odds of anyone having an overhead projector?
Well, that was part of the marketing when it was hard copy. We were going to have the Successor Games overhead projector to go with it, but the PDF completely blew that out of the water.
But my big thing with the tables, and I know that I harped on this especially in the episode and when you two and I got together to actually talk about it,
Yeah.
was information in a table should be succinct and
Yeah.
concise and precise. It should be, you should be able to take a look at the cell and know exactly what that cell means at that point without having to read a paragraph.
Yeah, that
And
was
so-
that was a big deal to us.
And so that's why when we sat down for that conversation, I was like, guys, you can take this entire sentence and turn it into an equation,
Yep.
and that will work. That will
Yep.
absolutely work.
And it
Yeah,
did.
I know. When we got the updated version that had all those changes in it, I was like, I can actually parse this faster now.
Yeah, and go ahead.
I was just going to reiterate the fact that you guys' review was it was awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
it just improved things, and you guys, it's awesome. You guys don't pull punches, man, and it was good that we took some shots on that because it ultimately helped improve what we were doing. So.
And that is entirely the point. Monk has heard me harp on about it in much more recent valleys. In fact, with Gubat Bunwa, there were things I harp on, and I tend to be the louder one just because red oni, blue oni, I'm the red oni. The thing I tell, just in case the developers are watching, because we made it a standard as part of Valley to tag whoever made the thing if we can find the socials to tag.
Right.
And so, if a dev is watching, and I'm up there being me, completely castigating and excoriating this entire section of a game, I always, at some point, will say, disclaimer. This is not because I hate your game. The things I see in your game are fantastic. And this one thing is making me go, holy shit, this is going to tank their game in my brain. So I'm trying to make sure your game works and does work for you and gets to people. Please take this criticism as what it is, a labor of love.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we definitely felt that way. And we could tell you were enjoying the game, and that the things that you were stop points for you or things that were jarring you were not about whether you were enjoying the game or not. It was legitimate things that were jarring you.
Yeah, it was always something like, guys, we know you personally. We talk to you guys on a semi-regular basis. We like you. You're cool people. I want your game to fucking sell. So these things could stop it from selling as much or at all if you're not careful.
No.
Right? Yeah.
And that is the oddly enough, Zan and I have explained to several people over the years, and especially in the last 2 years, about how we want as many people playing as many different games, and some crowds do not care for that, and some people don't seem to understand what resonate means. They know who they are.
Do not remind me of the fact that I had to explain to Pundit what the fuck a game resonating with a person means.
Yeah, but that's a whole other story, and I have explained to you our conflicts with that crowd. But given the fact that when I remember very early on, you had mentioned to me that one of the things that was a major source of inspiration early on was Rifts, which as we went into it, I could certainly see it in some aspects, though I will say this is much better organized than anything Palladium has put out in the last 30 years.
We love you, Kevin.
But given that, and given the way that vocations work, I would like to play a little bit of an association game, and this might be a bit of a stretch. So I'm gonna list off the vocations that were in Planetbound, and you can tell me if there are any OCCs from Rifts that you can remember that served as an influence. Some of them I had kind of guessed, but I think it'll be interesting to explore this.
Are you setting us up for legal action? Is that what's happening right here?
No.
Palladium could be listening.
One, I'm not sure if some of the folks there know how to operate a modern computer.
Oh, yikes.
Oh, I'll go there. I'm not saying anything harsher than what Bill Coffin said like a decade ago.
That's awesome. Yeah, so go for it.
Yeah,
We'll let you know.
All right, we'll start at the top and work our way down. So first is the Noble Knight.
So definitely you can feel the Glitter Boy influence there, and the in that. Not just the Glitter Boy. Something Rifts did was having robot armored vehicles was a big thing in Rifts of all kinds. And so in Planetbound, in the original iteration of Planetbound, there was the faction that is in the current iteration of Planetbound, the Noble Regency. That faction, their thing was to have big mecha things, and so what you have in book 1 of Planetbound is the Havoc unit that the Noble Knights pilot, and you'll see in future books regarding the Noble Regency that it is not just that vehicle, that they have other vehicles as well. And regardless, though, the original iteration of Planetbound was definitely inspired by all those big mecha things, including the Glitter Boy in Rifts, for sure.
Mm-hmm. All right, Sworn Sister.
I think we could draw parallels like to a Psystalker.
Okay,
I don't think it was inspiration.
No,
truly, but I can see parallels. Yeah.
Hey, I didn't even think of that. Yeah, that's a good one.
Peregrine.
Maybe the Vagabond from Rifts, maybe, because that was when Rifts, like that was just when we would play Rifts. That was like, okay, we'll just play that as a catch-all, and we'll just give them whatever, because it's just this so generalized thing. And when we did the Peregrine, we wanted them to be somebody who traveled and was a jack of all trades, and I'm reaching with that one.
Mm-hmm. Crimson Cavalier.
I don't know.
No, nothing's jumping out there.
Nothing.
The only thing that jumps out there is the fact that it's an Akira XP.
In fact, I'm kind of surprised you didn't try and do an art of the Crimson Cavalier doing the Akira slide.
I don't think I don't have that somewhere in my
gallery. Right, that's
I can hear it in the background now. monk, but it's not rasera, 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 rasera.
A solo lodestar.
No.
I guess maybe Cyber 90.
Oh, okay.
Again, I not true inspiration drawn from that, but I mean, sure, maybe we can make comparisons there.
Okay.
The warden.
I don't think so. That was a completely its own thing.
Yeah, got nothing.
Yeah.
I will admit that the warden certainly added to my my particular weapon brain rot, as Zan has called me out on multiple occasions.
Polearm brain rot, this
Yes.
motherfucker.
That's all.
Whether spears, halberds, glaives, even and yes,
Says
staffs.
glaive wrong like usual.
Mhm.
Even glaring scepters. Even glaring scepters.
Mhm. I just part of it is the whole monk thing, but also the fact that I was sick of quarterstaffs getting disrespected in games.
Yes. Me too.
I'm just sick of quarterstaffs. They're fucking shit.
Wait, you gotta for some real stuff that'll tickle your monk bone. That didn't sound so good.
No.
but that'll tickle the monk thing for you. Wait for book 2.
That's still bad, Jeremy. Both are dick jokes.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure when that Shadows of the Damned remaster comes along, I'm gonna be streaming that and making even more dick jokes than the game already does.
But
Lord.
look, combined with Jeremy's dick jokes and your polearm brain rot, I get to call you the monk pole dancer.
Funny thing about that, in Final Fantasy D20, there was a Dragoon archetype called Pole Dancer.
Really? Serious?
Monk,
That's crazy.
monk, you have a plan to eventually play Black Myth Wukong, right?
Yes?
Okay, there is a move in that for the pillar stance that turns you into a fucking pole dancer.
That's awesome.
That
You
is-
spin around the pole and hit everything in a circle, because of course you do, because that's what you do with the staff when you're monkey.
That is definitely something that Sun Wukong would do.
Yes.
I mean,
Which, quick tangent, I found it funny that there was a tweet that was trying to make parallels between Sun Wukong and Kratos, and I'm like, Kratos is a rage demon. Sun Wukong is the universe's biggest troll.
yes, Sun Wukong is more of a trickster than Loki was in many cases. But we won't get into, the 300 pages of Journey to the West that are all Sun Wukong scenes. Out of the 1,800 pages of that story. Do not get me started.
Yeah. But anyway, Cleric of Oa.
Oh, Clerics of Oa. Didn't have any inspiration. No. Mm-mm.
No, I can certainly see that, though.
No, there's an inspiration, not from Palladium, but there's absolutely an inspiration from Shaolin fucking monks.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Admittedly, if by some miracle you can get props made, I would love to see a proper martial artist try and do forms with some of the weapons that the clerics have.
Yes, that would be so cool.
Just hand them to me. I'll show you how to use them.
Yes.
Limber up, Zan. It's all you.
I don't need to limber up. I just need to beat people to death with them,
Now-
right?
The Exxon and the Mara Ek, those would be easy to do forms with. It's the Ek and the Mara Khan
Yes.
that would be
Yeah.
interesting.
Very interesting.
Oh.
I mean, all of them can be used to beat a motherfucker.
Yeah, dude, he's not
It's
wrong.
not-
Monk.
It's not gonna stop me from finding a good way to do so.
I mean, the Ek, it doesn't have to be held in the middle. You can just grab one of the ends and just use it as a.
Absolutely, but so
Okay, let me get this out of the way first. Were you trying to make something like a batleth when you thought of that thing?
Well, I mean, I always Star Trek has been my lifelong inspiration. So I'm sure somewhere in the brain is there.
Because there are people who've done full forms with the bat'leth.
Yes, you're not wrong.
But those full forms are based off of traditional forms for certain types
Yeah.
of fighting weapons found in parts of Asia. So it's
Yeah.
not like it's even new, Monk.
Yeah.
I'm
And
just
anyway,
Zan would come up with something new and alien just for the Gorak.
I would come up with something new and alien that looks like something primal because, well, monkey brain.
Mhm.
I'll be honest. I have a lot of monkey on the brain because I've been playing Black Myth Wukong like crazy since it dropped. So I am
Monkey.
just, I have returned to monk.
Yes,
Yeah.
and the Gorak, the primal strength of the Gorak. I mean, that's a thing to be the monkey.
Yeah. See, the big thing with the Ek is that there is a weapon somewhat like this in real life with
Really?
a ring that has protrusions on it that you use to hurt people, and it's usually a little bigger, like it goes
Okay.
around the whole body rather than
Oh,
just
okay.
what would be an arm.
So like a hula
But there
hoop.
are kind of like a deadly hula hoop of doom, yes.
Awesome.
But you could still use that thing right there. I can see myself using that thing to catch people's arms. I can see myself using that thing to spin it around my own hand to fuck people
Right.
up like I'm a windmill of death.
Yes.
Remember that a runaway Ferris wheel is just a windmill of corpses. One of my favorite old Cards Against Humanity.
Yeah.
That's
But
awesome.
everything else here, even the Marakan, the Exa, all of these are fairly simple. Or I mean, the MCon is just literally a flail.
Yeah.
I know how to fight with a flail. You spin real fast to try and catch weapons, and then you hit people until their brain is turned inside out.
Yeah.
It really is only the Ek that has a unique enough structure that you'd have to find. You'd have to look in some really niche places to find a fighting form that has something like this.
Although with the Marakan, I could see somebody using that and adding the clang sound effect from that god awful Berserk anime.
Oh man, Berserk! I forgot about that anime. Thanks, Monk.
Well, he's only talking about the 2016 edition before the development studio that made it actually got really good at 3D, and then they made Other Side Picnic, and Other Side Picnic was an excellent 3D.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
So what's after the clerics? Jad Gorak?
Yeah, Jad Gorak.
No, that doesn't have. Oh no, the Stimban,
The
I guess.
Stimban, right?
But yeah, I guess that could be a parallel. But that's not where the inspiration was. That's a childhood inspiration for me in the '80s. There was a cartoon, because everything '80s was cartoons that became toys, that became cartoons that became toys. And Dino Riders was my thing.
Yeah.
I loved it, and it was a long time inspiration for what was the Jad Gorak in the original version of Planet Bound, and then this version.
You know what's really funny, guys?
Yeah.
Now people are going to be accusing you of stealing it from a video game. You know
Right.
why? You want to know why?
No, please.
Because Monster Hunter Wilds, the Seika,
really?
is you ride a giant, essentially bird dinosaur. Yes.
Wow.
Okay.
It's pretty cool.
That's cool.
And
Yeah.
it's funny you bring up Wilds because of a certain weapon that game is bringing back.
Which weapon?
Lances.
What
Ah.
are you talking about? Lances were in the other games too, Monk.
I could have swore they weren't. So
No, Lance and Gunlance have been in every game since the fucking beginning.
all right, I stand corrected on that front.
Interacted. Dang.
Yes, you do.
I'm the guy who has over 1,000 hours in Monster Hunter World and Iceborne on 2 different consoles.
Man, he is the guy.
But
That's child's play compared to some of the people out there who actually have time.
it is. I will. Now, one might argue, wouldn't the Ekon, the lance that they use, count under pole weapon brain rot? Not really, but it is not far removed from what we were trying to do with the Chocobo Knight.
Yeah.
I think I even brought that up
Yeah.
Mhm.
because I specifically said I want to see a lance charge on chocobos.
Yes. Well, so again, that was part of my inspiration. Was another childhood favorite of mine for having some sort of lance type of weapon for them, even though they're riding a big monster thing. Was Joust. I was just a huge Atari Joust player, and I thought
I'm gonna
that
be
that was
honest. That's a really. I didn't make a comment about this back then when we were talking about the Ekcon, but that's a really light lance.
Yeah.
15 pounds is like 15 pounds would be the weight of like longer halberds.
Mm.
Most lances are also longer than that. I might add, they're
Yeah, they are longer
long.
than that. Mm.
Got to get me
No,
on the horse.
usually a little more
and hit
pointy
the other
than
rider.
that, for sure.
But no, this makes it like, but the fact that it's shorter and lighter actually made sense to me back then as well, because from everything that we read, you're fighting on the beast's back as if you are a single unit, basically.
Yeah.
So you're fighting in tandem with your beast. Your lance doesn't need to be that big because you're basically acting as a third claw on the beast.
Right.
It's so.
That
Although I will admit, when I think of these guys' charges, there is always one bit of music that keeps playing in my head, and I blame the Lone Ranger for this. I keep hearing the overture of William Tell.
That's awesome.
One could argue that I am too young to be making a Lone Ranger joke, but one could argue I was too young to be making Gunsmoke references.
I think even Travis and I are too young to be loans. Those references technically.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up with a lot of old TV and a lot of old
Yeah, we grew up with it. It doesn't. Don't know.
There are people who told me I was too young to make the early Columbo references I'd make as a kid.
You make Columbo references. That's awesome.
Fuck yeah. Columbo's a badass. What are you talking about?
You're not wrong.
No disrespect, Zen.
Like if other people were making Holmes references, he was overplayed in my mind. I'm like, no, fuck you. Columbo wins.
Columbo.
Batman reference? No, fuck you. Columbo wins.
That's so great.
World's greatest detective has to go around on Christmas Eve using a megaphone to find the Joker. Fuck you. Columbo would have found it by the end of the episode, and he would have had to yell at anybody.
Yep.
Of course, I'm a little bit biased because of my preferences for the Shadow.
Oh yeah, Shadow.
That and
Billy Zane would like a word with you.
I'm sure he would. I'm also sure some of the people who were responsible for the Phantom would like a word with me, but the only person whose word I'll accept on that front is Peter Chung.
Mm.
You know, since he was the one who did Phantom 2040.
Yeah, I didn't never see Phantom 2040.
Yeah.
I love the Shadow and I love the Phantom, and they're both. They all get treated really badly sometimes, though.
They do get treated pretty badly.
So they get treated pretty badly by people with shit taste and shit personalities.
We hear ya.
He's cooking. Let him cook.
Oh, if I have to cook, I'm roasting them alive. I'm inviting them to the cookout, but they're not coming back.
That's great.
But
so what's after the Jod?
Yep.
What's going on?
Hooligan.
Pretty sure it's the Hooligan, isn't it?
Oh, Hooligan. No, not that I can't even draw a parallel, but the inspiration for the Hooligans was actually the Lost Boys from Peter Pan.
I could see it, and I think I did.
Another childhood favorite. People are like,
nobody knows what you're talking about.
What's Peter Pan?
But I have to be a little bit more specific. The version of the Lost Boys that they feel the most like are the ones that were in the Hook movie.
That's exactly their inspiration. Yep, the ones from Hook. Yep.
When you're dealing with something like Peter Pan that's been adapted and interpreted in countless ways over the
Yes.
years,
Yeah.
you have to be a little more specific.
I'm sorry. I should have clarified.
Bring
Been clear that yes,
the Lost
Lost
Boy
Boy from Hook.
from Hook, and bring up Peter Pan. You know, that just reminds me. Why is Peter Pan always flying? Because he can never land. You know, I love this joke because it never grows old.
So yeah, they were meant to be the outcasts, the strange, the different, the
Yeah. I think I made an Aussie joke at one point.
Yes, I think you did make an Aussie joke at one point. People make references definitely to, or parallels definitely to Mad Max and anything post-apocalyptic desert world.
Yeah, except I think the Hooligans never made something as ridiculous looking as the Owen. Have you ever?
I don't know about that.
I don't know. The Tinkers have made some stuff.
Jeremy, have you ever seen what an Owen gun looks like?
No, I don't think
I
so.
have.
This was something they made. This was something that was made in World War II. And I'm just going to show you the image. And for those at home, just look up Owen gun and go to any image search or whatever search engine you use. But I'm going to.
It's just a top-fed 9mm grease gun. That's all it is.
Tell me if you can figure out the problem with this. Yeah. What's wrong with this?
There is no problem. You are wrong.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess it would work. Other than you have to. Is that the magazine? It's
on the
just.
top?
Yes.
I mean, that's just going to get in your eyesight, I'm guessing.
Well, okay. So first of all, this is a submachine gun.
Mm-hmm.
So aiming is a commodity that most submachine guns of that era can ill afford.
Well, submachine guns of that era were supposed to be used at like 50 yards.
They were supposed to be used at less than that, Monk. They were supposed to be used in pistol range and just made to throw more pistol rounds than normal.
Yeah.
Actually, by volume.
Just for you, Monk, I'm definitely making a coil.
If you're making
a coil Owen gun that if you use a PS coil, it'll explode if you're too bad at it.
No, if you're making a gun from me in book 2, then it has to fit within the type of brain rot that I have for firearms, and that is the ridiculously oversized shit, like the 4-bore or the Fat Mac.
Okay.
No. Monk. I am going to specifically ask them to make the thing I hurt everybody with just a couple days ago. Guys, I'm going to post this in the sacristy chat. So the chat for this actual VC.
Yeah.
I present to you a bullpup revolver.
Oh God, this.
Wait.
And yet that still looks better than the guns in Starfield.
Monk, low bar.
Yes.
The guns in Starfield are in a black hole. You can't get higher than they literally cannot go lower.
That's great.
Yeah, and as for the 4-bore, it is a ridiculous single-shot rifle made by Christian Firearms. It is the bullet is 1 inch in diameter.
And weighs 1 pound.
Yeah, weighs 1 pound. I do not recommend firing it unless you are of our size, and even we wouldn't do it because of the ridiculous amount.
I don't even think I could pick that up. What is it? What is it physically made of? Wood?
Oh, what the thing I showed you?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a custom bullpup wood stock that they then seated a revolver into.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. But that's not what Monk is talking about. Monk is talking about the 4-bore, which is it's basically artillery in rifle form. It shoot like you said, 1 inch in diameter for its particular projectile. It weighs about 1 pound. And he says you shouldn't shoot it unless you're our size, and even then we wouldn't shoot it. I'd shoot it, Monk. I don't give a fuck about getting a 200-pound kick in my shoulder.
Yeah,
I've been kicked by horses that have done worse.
yeah, you've been kicked by horses.
Exactly.
I'm just saying, I don't think
Not even my
Jeremy
fault
has.
either.
Yeah, no, I have not been kicked by. I've ridden plenty of horses. None of them have kicked me, thankfully.
Only reason I got kicked was because a thunderstorm started while I was rushing down the horse I had ridden in his barn.
Mm.
He got scared. He kicked me. It was something that you can't avoid because I
Because
didn't
where you
start
gonna
a thunderstorm. Not like I control the weather.
Hey, Zan, I held myself back. I could have invoked the punt gun.
You mean to think that even Scott doesn't shoot with his shoulder? He uses a fucking trolley system for that bitch?
Yeah, because you're not supposed to shoulder fire it.
Well, I mean, not today, but I think it was yesterday, a few days ago. Scott shot an old anti-tank rifle, 20mm anti-tank rifle that weighs 130 pounds by itself.
Mm.
Yeah, good shit.
Yeah.
But what Monk wants you to make is big weapons that are going to hurt the people shooting them as much as the people they shoot.
I've told
We will put that on our task list.
Yeah, I've told you, I have a fondness for giving my players powerful but unsafe equipment. And the metric that I use for that
the
is-
hooligans are perfect for that. Then.
And for the record, there is this infamous image of the punt gun, which everybody's seen in one form or another.
Yeah. Oof. Yeah, hooligans would do that.
Is that the two of you? Did you take that this morning?
No,
No.
we don't even live in the same place. Plus, one of them isn't black enough.
Mhm. Fuck off. But no. The reason you're not supposed to fire it shoulder fire is because it's meant to be put on a small boat, i.e., a punt. This was used for commercial duck hunting to kind of take out ducks en masse. It got banned for doing that because it was too good at its job.
That's awesome.
Yeah, one shot and you got your limit, huh?
Oh, you're not like shooting like 1 or 2 ducks like this is duck hunt. Although I'd rather shoot.
You're
that
shooting
fucking
entire
dog.
flocks.
Yeah, you're dropping the whole flock.
Mm-hmm. Dropping the whole flock and then picking up the.
Is there
remains.
anything left though to eat? I don't know.
I mean, you can dry it off, defeather the thing, and then take care of it that way. But just because of the noise, even if you miss, you still end up hitting.
That's great.
You know, because sound does this wonderful, wonderful thing called fucking up with air pressure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sound is a form of concussion, so of course it does concussive damage.
Mhm.
Yes.
And remember, Cyclops' beams did concussive damage technically, but so does a cannon.
Cyclops' beams were punches from the punch dimension. Like,
Yes, and getting hit in the face with a cannonball will render you with no face.
Yes.
But the last one on the list would be the Tinker.
Yeah, the Tinker doesn't have a Rift's parallel. Can't even think of a parallel.
Techno Wizard, maybe?
Oh no, but they aren't
But they're
Nova
not- yeah,
users.
no.
I mean, they guess they could be Nova born, but no, there's not. The Tinkers came up, as they designed the fort. I'm like, who built this thing? Oh, I guess I guess there should be some smart guys amongst the hooligans to take care of these rowdies.
Mhm.
So yeah,
You-
and
you
we
know,
wanted a savant class.
yeah. Do you know what I consider your Tinkers to be?
Mm,
The stereotype for gnomes for the last 50 years.
there you go. That part.
They're
And they often are kind of like, because they're almost like the outcasts of the outcasts. They're really every tinker that has ever played and every tinker that I NPC is kind of a weirdo.
Weirdos.
Yeah, they're kind of oddballs.
They are the stereotype for gnomes, except in
love it.
space.
in space.
Space
Trapped on a
gnomes.
planet. Space gnomes.
Mhm.
That's great.
Yeah, pretty.
So yes, we played a lot of Rifts growing up. We even used for a time Palladium system when we would play Planetbound. But yeah, it was was definitely something, not just Rifts, but Palladium in general.
Mhm.
Fantasy heroes.
And I do want to make clear, I don't begrudge anybody for playing Palladium games, but
Sure,
I
Mike.
only ever begrudge them if they try and blow smoke about the navigation problems that I have been very, very consistent on.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yes.
that
There
and
is there is
some of
navigation issue.
some of
The-
the infamous takes that Simbeta has had in his books.
Yeah. We get it. Yeah, we definitely took not only your feedback but just our own into consideration. We're pretty orderly guys. We like things presented to us in order. We like games that are orderly, and so that was a big part of our values for making this game make sense in order. Like for even for example, having character creation where it's usually at the beginning of a game. The most litigious game, I understand, has decided in their new 2024 version of the game to do it our way.
Yeah, it's not going to save them.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I didn't say it was going to save them.
It's a little bit late, especially. It's certainly not going to turn their finances around. Last I checked, Hasbro's stock is still graded as sell.
Oof. Yeah.
I am going to have to just interrupt for a second. Dragon, the weather is not chaos. The weather is actually an extremely intricate and detailed ordered system, which is why it can be predicted. Fuck you, you can't blame me for the weather.
No,
Yeah.
We are not. Do we look like a Korean dictator? Don't answer that.
I'm not nearly Asian
Don't
enough for that. Monk is too black for that. Ultimately, neither of us has walked on the sun. We are not glorious Rita Kim Jong Il.
And I'm certainly not the villain in a Parker and Stone movie.
Right.
But I do recall when we talked about Nova during the things, we had talked about how we enjoyed it being a skill instead of this completely separate thing that is. I do remember around that time I ended up going into a bit of a rant about how much I absolutely hate the over focus that mages end up getting in some TTRPGs. In fact, a lot of TTRPGs in general, and even more so when it comes to fantasy ones.
Yeah. Agreed.
Because you have of course the ridiculous spell lists. 3.5 D&D is one of the more infamous cases. But there's been plenty of other incidents of this kind of thing, and a lot of times when you have it as a separate thing, which technically speaking Nova is somewhat separate, but not in the but when I'm talking separate, I'm meaning getting a whole chapter all by itself,
and getting a truly whole different mechanic than how regular skills work in the game.
Yeah.
There are other critical variable considerations for Nova, but it works the same as any other skill that you would have in the game. They just happen to have the ability to do the skill.
Yeah,
that was a big thing. And it really levels the playing field. Like Nova then doesn't become OP'd in the game like it does Magic does in a lot of other games, because it doesn't function differently than other things that other people would have to do if they were using just a normal skill that they had. And it was something we even experienced, I think, to correct me if I'm wrong or if you disagree, Trav, even in the original iteration of Planetbound, the Magic, what was Nova then, was overpowered.
Oh,
it was
completely.
And so we were, when we went to go about it in a commercial iteration, we're like, yeah, let's do this in a way that makes sense and doesn't make it like if you don't play one of these, you're going to just get smoked.
That was really Jeremy kind of driving that. Actually, I feel like we kind of took turns not bucking conventions for the sake of doing so, but re-examining existing conventions and going, well, does this work? Does this work? And when we kind of got into the Nova section, I was kind of a mind that, well, of course you create a different system for it, because and Jeremy was like, well, we don't need to, like, we can just follow the skills. And that was, that was a really good idea.
Mhm. And I will note that one of the things I found really funny in hindsight is when I did that first interview with you, and we ended up talking about the combat system, and you were like, "Oh, the combat system might be a little bit orthodox," and I'm like, "Humor me," and you said it's drawing upon Street Fighter 2, and I'm like, "What?" I was like, "What you call that?" Maybe if you were dealing with anybody else, it probably would have been unorthodox.
Yes.
But I had already talked about games that were directly drawing upon fighting games in the temple, so it was just silly.
Yeah.
But it's that's something I always come back to, because the one thing that has gotten Zan and myself in a fair bit of trouble, and we do not apologize for it, is the fact that video games should be just as much on the table for design inspiration as anything else.
Yeah.
And there are some people who are so reflexive about that the moment it gets brought up, they just clam the fuck up.
Yeah.
And it's always silly to me.
Yeah, and I agree, and we definitely wanted some of that feeling to it, and thus one-on-one combat having things like the ability to maintain initiative within the combat, so it feeling like when you're in a Street Fighter or some similar 2D fighting game where you've gotten them and they can't get away from you, and you're doing the pummel thing until they're able to break it. And so us being able to do that within one-on-one combat, and to a degree even in multiple combatants, but for it to feel too, the another part of that was that combat is not always pretty. Like actual combat is not always pretty, and it is fast and dirty sometimes, and for it to really feel that way was I don't know, when Travis nailed down what would be one-on-one combat and then multiple combatants, especially, it really, in actual gameplay, it is some of the funnest stuff that, and it is some of the most you're in an uproar laughing because of the insanity of it, but very true to the insanity of how this is going to go down if this is real people really trying to hurt each other in these type of situations. So I don't, we love it, and it does also feel like that energy of a fighting game. It still feels gameish, I think, but it definitely feels chaotic too at the same time.
Of course, I think the other thing is, I've seen a lot of people use the phrase meta currency for things that I've referred to as the extra effort mechanic, and you certainly have that here. Though it's funny you use the word gamey, because I think I'm not sure when, but at some point a not insignificant amount of designers forgot that they were making a game.
Yeah.
As our erstwhile friend brother Joel likes to say, you make elf games.
Yeah. That and it's a game. I mean, it really is a game. And there's very few. It's a role playing game, and that's another thing too. This is a role playing game. Like that's what it is, and we didn't want to try to make it anything other than a really good role playing game, and including the role playing part of it having associated mechanics to the role-playing aspect, and that it fits with the game that you're playing called Planetbound. So the rule system was not made for anything other than that. Not that it can't be adapted to other things, and not that it won't be in other games that we may choose to produce it at some time, but it's a role-playing game, and the mechanics work for the role-playing part of it and work along with the role-playing part of it. Other than the D20 mechanic is really the only hard-line disassociated mechanic.
Mm-hmm. And when it, the part of the reason that I find it silly is that a lot of people are using the term meta currency as basically a means of dismissal. You know, oh, this game is a meta currency, so it's too gamey. And something Zan and I have gotten on people in the past is the fact that role playing is not method acting. Method actors are rare unicorns, even in the acting world. So expecting that same level of improvisation from just random people at a table is a bit of an ask.
Yeah.
A bit is an understatement.
Yeah. But you said the early iteration is that I know we eventually got the copy that we did, but were there multiple cases of you guys blowing it up and starting semi-fresh over the years from the original conception to now?
Yeah, so from you're talking about the original conception as in 14-year-old Jeremy? Yes, definitely. So that conception went from age 14 all the way to 2004 was the end of that. But it continued its story and iteration all the way to that point. From then on, we had other iterations of Planet Bound, but still in the same world, just in, for example, parallel universes. We did all kinds of things, other planets that survived Sundeath. There was lots of stuff that we played with at that point. And then when we decided to do a commercial iteration of the game, that definitely was, so let's start from scratch. Would you agree, Trav? Yeah. We would let's start from scratch and create a game that is for the market and is Planet Bound, the game that we grew up with. And that was just an interesting experience itself.
Even the changes from that point to decide to do the commercial iteration up until what was actually released.
Yes.
There's a
ton of
correct stuff changing in that space too.
For sure. So the decision to make a commercial iteration, the first ask was actually, I think we've talked about this in the historical part. The first ask was Trav in 2010. Neither of us were ready. Second ask was a buddy of ours who had played the in 2015, but Trav and I working on this iteration was 2020 till now.
Yeah. Also, a thanks to Mario, who is the first person to take advantage of the membership options on the channel. So
nice.
Mario.
Welcome to the club of being a Temple brother.
Yes, sir.
Nice.
Yeah, I just set that up about a week ago.
That's great.
But with now, I think going a bit forward, I didn't realize this until afterwards, but the different types of combat, if there's any parallel that I would use, and Zan, this might be a bit of a stretch, but hear me out. It'd be the dual combat setup that we saw in Pokken Tournament.
I would say that's a bit of a stretch. You're right.
Now, granted, there aren't multiple combatants in there, but it's the closest thing I can think of to shifting between 3D and 2D like that. That's the reason why I invoked that one in particular. Because of the whole 2-mode setup. Yeah, it is a bit of a stretch because you're not going to have fighting games that have multiple combatants all that often.
No, not often.
But it was the closest one I could think of. Maybe the only one that might come close is maybe Bushido Blade, but no, that's even more of a stretch. As much as I like Bushido Blade, although it's very good for creating salt if you try and play it at parties. Because one hit kills in that game.
Oh yeah.
But on the other hand, uh, if you're playing fighting games at a party, salt is inevitable. Even more
Yes,
so depending on your
sure.
choice of character and your choice of game.
Uh-huh.
Choice of drink, yeah.
Yeah, and or if you're, especially if you're Jeremy Jack playing Smash with his sons, and boy, all bets are off at that point.
And you talk about shit talking. Good grief.
Oh,
He
Sounds,
makes me blush, man.
No, it just sounds to me like he admitted he probably has a skill issue compared to his sons.
Well,
no, burn.
depends on Smash, because if we're dealing with Brawl and Meta Knight is involved, then the punishment game has to come into effect.
I'm telling you, you're they're better than me.
I see. I told you. He said he just admitted to a skill issue against his sons.
Yep, no. But I'd still talk some mad shit.
You
Well,
better be
that's
able to back that shit up.
That's standard fare. I'd be disappointed if you
Pull the dad card on that one, like, hey.
I mean, if it were you and me at the table, Jeremy, and you started talking mad shit, my response is, "You're talking mad shit for someone in Cloud Strife range."
Plus, I've mentioned my fondness for some of these stories around Larry Bird and all the talk and all the trash talk he did to everybody.
Yeah.
My favorite being that whole thing where he said to Barkley, "It's disrespectful for you guys to put a white guy on me."
Wow. That's funny.
That and the whole thing of going to some rookie and going, you got fighting you, I like you, but I'm still getting 30 on your ass. But with that in mind, I do recall one of the things that we really liked during part 1 was that travelogue style of introducing the various denizens and nations, and it sounds like for future books you guys are going to be continuing that narrative.
Yeah, so the trilogy, meaning books 1, 2, and 3, are all the traveling story of Chiron and Orthan throughout those 3 continents in Southwest Adidam.
Mm-hmm.
But that will, and that I tend to jump the guns. Trav, you shut me up at any time. The Atlas books that'll be after that are more specific to certain things, like the Outlands, the Noble Regency, the Lodestar. When we get real detailed into those as their own books, those will be done in a similar manner, but from the vantage point of a lot of different characters. So we go from Chiron and Orthan to learning a lot about the vantage point of peoples from within those peoples.
Mm-hmm. I can certainly get that. Now,
but wait, Chiron and Orthan was a great vantage point, because to introduce players from protagonists is something that we do all the time in science fiction and fantasy, in film and television, because we need the relatable person. We need Luke Skywalker to tell us what to feel out of sorts, because we feel out of sorts as he's wandering the galaxy trying to fight this thing called the Galactic Empire. So having Chiron and Orthan was that, like, Planet Bound is going to be so foreign to these readers, so let's give them protagonists that are, especially Chiron, out of sorts and learning as they go, and the players will be able to follow along.
Yeah, the importance of an audience surrogate is very important.
Yeah.
I think,
and then Travis continued that I feel like even in the crunch, Travis continued that in gameplay examples. It really feels like, oh, now I see. I have the example that's giving some real in-game stuff, and now I get it, because now I'm able to experience it as through the reading of the players doing it.
Yeah, and I think you had hinted at this earlier, but you were talking about having voice actors handling reading off that part 1.
Mm-hmm.
was it easy to get them on the page when it came to that, since this is certainly going to be unorthodox?
Yeah, so you tell the story, Trav.
Well, so the journey and where we arrived at with the PDF and everything, Jeremy had put in the bookmarks and we'd done everything, and he had the idea of like, man, it'd be really cool to have some voice work for these excerpts from Chiron and Orthan, and I was like, dude, yeah, that's fantastic.
Well, I was really more than Chiron and Orthan at the beginning. I wanted it for the glossary. I'm like,
You're right.
let's really show people how to say these words, because we say them all the time, and I don't know that even our guides are gonna work.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you. That kind of was the driver for the thing, and then that shifted over into having the narrative parts of it being read, and so I thought it was a great idea, and Jeremy was thinking, oh well, maybe we can have so and so do it, or so and so, just kind of people that we know in our lives, casual people, and I had remembered back in the day when art was under development, the artist that had done all of the color treatment work to Jeremy's art had done kind of like a live stream of one of the pieces, and his fiance was kind of narrating the chat and everything, and narrating the show as Joe was doing his work, and she had an awesome voice. Just narrating the stuff sounded really cool, and she had jokingly said something about, oh, maybe I could do a reading of one of the characters here, and she had done one for the book just kind of during the stream. I was like, that's legit. She sounded really good. So I was like, hey, what if you asked Tina? Could Tina do it? And Jeremy was like, oh yeah, holy crap, right? So you pick it up.
I had completely forgot that Tina had even done that, because it was so long. That was early in development that Joe had done that live stream. Joe, it's the guy who's the artist who does the color treatment, Joe Hogan, and his fiance Tina. She converted all of the the like logos and stuff into vector files so that they could be done on T-shirts and hats and things like that. And then for the book as well. Then, so I forgot about the live stream. Travis mentions it, and so I was like, "Oh, that's right." So I contacted Tina and Joe, and I was like, "Hey, Tina, have you ever done voice acting work or anything like that? Because we remember you read, and we thought it was such a great voice. I don't know if you have any experience, but would you be willing to try at least?" She sends me back her full reel, and she has you guys have heard her voice. She has done so much commercial work, it's ridiculous. If I were to play her reel, you'd be like, oh yeah, that I know her from Walmart, from CBS, she's been that gal, and it was great. So I was like, oh my gosh, no way. And she said I'd be happy to do it. And then having Joe, so her fiance, the guy who did the color treatment, Chiron and Orthan eventually have a love story going on in their arc. And I said, well, he came from New Genesis, Orthan did, and he came from the streets of New Genesis, and Joe has this very thick Staten Island, I'm pretty sure it's Staten Island accent, and he's definitely from a borough. And I said, what if New Genesis, that's the sound of the underworld of New Genesis? What if they have that thick New York type accent? And let me ask Joe if he's willing to do it. And he was on board. And so Tina coached him through how to do it. And then they did the voice acting for Chiron and Orthan. I did Moss's opening, and I did Garnash's excerpt on Addendum, the little squirrel guy's excerpt on Addendum, and then Tina did Shima Fabimo's excerpt on Nova Waves, and she did a British accent for that one. It totally sounds like a different character than Chiron, and it's just that. And then the one that I did the Moss and Garnash, and I've done voice acting work myself, and I was a sign language interpreter for 25 years, and my niche as a sign language interpreter was I did voice performance work. So deaf people that did one-man shows, I would go and voice their one-man shows. And I became known as the man of 1,000 voices in that work, because there was a guy who did a skit called Quick Spear, where he did Hamlet in 10 minutes, and he would line up all the multiple characters of Hamlet on chairs in front of him with his picture as all the different characters, and he would run back and forth in sign language, signing in front of each one as those characters. And so to voice that for the hearing audience to know that there was a difference between what he was doing is that I had to have a voice for all 20 or so of those characters. So I was changing in this 10-minute little skit, changing my voice at it. Anyway, so the point being is that I had done work for it before myself, and so doing Garnash was the hardest. I did so many takes because maintaining that voice, that old sounding Ewok, was very difficult for that long, even for that little excerpt.
Yeah, when it comes to that sort of craziness, there's two stories that I always come to. One of them was the guy who did the I believe it was Leguizamo who did the clown in the live action Spawn.
Yes.
And in order to get that voice, he had to swallow slugs.
That craziness.
And then there was also Greg Aries when he was doing the voice of Chrono in Chrono Crusade, which is actually a pretty decent anime, especially for the time. And he basically had to do two different tones of the younger and the adult Chrono, sometimes in the same scene. And it almost killed his voice because right around that time he was in the middle of quitting smoking. And you're effectively going on two ends of the pendulum in the same session.
Yeah.
And then of course there's the endurance stuff, like with Scott McNeil having to do the two villains with the most screen time when he was doing the Mega Man cartoon.
Oh,
because he was both Dr. Wily and he was Proto Man.
That's awesome.
It was the Scott McNeil show featuring Mega Man.
Yeah.
That.
So on occasion, the other folks would be like, "Oh, Scott's got one of his scenes coming up," and they just leave Roman leave him by himself.
He can do it. It'll be, yeah, it is definitely. I've done some voice work meaning interpreting voice work, where I'm the sole interpreter for, I don't know, a 2-hour one-man show, and boy, my voice is by the end of it. But they did, Tina and Joe, I can't say enough about how awesome they did. And Tina Tina does all the glossary too, which is in her own voice, and it's just spectacular.
Yeah, and they jumped right into it too. As soon as
I know.
Jeremy asked, they jumped right into it. They just got after it immediately. They've been super supportive of the whole project. Just some stellar people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, with that in mind, I'm curious if you guys have plans on doing like, say, a character creation walkthrough video in the future, or something along that line to lean into guidance.
Well, Tina does look pretty good on camera, so maybe we'll ask her to do that. We haven't personally. Me and Trav are not in front of the camera guys. We don't mind talking to people and interacting with people, but we aren't those people. But there are those people in the world, so I'm sure that those people that play Planet Bound will show up, and we'll coordinate something that looks like that.
But we recently did, Monk, was put together because we're running a regular game right now.
This is
in
good.
the Sacramento area at a game cafe called Galaxy Game Cafe in Citrus Heights, and we're running a Planet Bound game every Thursday night. Jeremy is the GM, I'm the RM, and we're throwing down and having a good time. But in kind of getting ready for this and everything, we were rolling up characters, and we went through one of them, and it takes some time. There's a lot of, like you said, it's a crunch dense sort of approach, and there's a lot of math to do when you're kind of arriving at all of the different statistical information that you're kind of entering on the character sheet. So we said, man, that took a long time, and we're going to figure this out. So what we did, we put together an Excel.
Especially for people who are paying to come to a game cafe and they have a limited time. So
we didn't want to spend hours and hours rolling up characters, right? So after the first session, we went home and jumped on Excel and put together
what do you?
Okay, I put together the character cruncher. And so now it's pretty cool. Like you're able to just select your vocation, you're able to select your archetype, you're able to select your people, and then you just enter in your 7 attribute, just your raw rolls. and then from that it slaps everything together for you, and
The
then
whole
you can
character
just transfer it over to your character sheet, and you're good to go. So that's pretty cool and helpful. We think we're going to probably make that public freebie as well here in the not too distant future, and then maybe work on some other kind of crunch helpful.
He's working on
tools.
some crunch, all these, because there's great sheets in the game for multiple combatants. There's great sheets in the game for damage. There's great sheets in the game for keeping track of stuff. And Travis has started this brand of what'll be just Planetbound crunch sheets for him that they're able to just click, 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 and then there's their answer.
Mm-hmm.
And the character crunch, I mean, that's incredible. For as dense, I mean, that character creation is a big section of that book, and there's a lot of, 65% of this part or that you're doing, and to have a cruncher that let's see, when was our last game? Last night? Thursday night.
That was last night.
Yeah, last night. Yeah, right. We did it last. So like new players showed up, and so I was role playing with the players who were already playing with us, and Trav took the little bit of time at the beginning of me role playing where I didn't need the rule master, and he was able to roll up the guy's character like
yeah, it was nice. Instead of him waiting on me, I was waiting on him, which is fine. He was taking his time. He was being very thorough in skill selection and technique selection and everything, but he wasn't waiting on me to run a bunch of numbers like some sort of deranged accountant.
So yeah, character crunchers are coming.
Yeah.
Or Planetbound crunchers are coming.
Yeah, I've talked about this elsewhere, but I do think character assistance is something that should be considered to be a bit more standard in the TTRPG space. Because if I'm being honest, when it comes to the relationship with digital tools, a large swath of the TTRPG space, and I'm not putting blame on anyone for this, because this is not just a problem with indies. This is a problem even with the bigger names, that the digital tools are medieval. They're the kind of digital tools that haven't advanced very much past 2005.
Yeah.
With very rare exceptions, and some of those rare exceptions are not all that supportive of homebrewing. That's why Tabletop Mirror has gotten my attention, because that is doing the VTT thing, but they want to have a bigger emphasis on homebrewing and letting people homebrew whole systems within their VTT if need be. I talked about that in the interview I did on that matter last week.
Yeah. Yeah, we haven't played too much in the VTT space. Whether there'll be a VTT of Planetbound remains to be seen. But if that
instead of making a whole in-house VTT, it would be much better served to give VTT support to one that already exists.
That's what we're thinking. Like many other things that have shown up, the right person to do the Planetbound VTT, they'll show up and they'll do it. Not me or Travis.
Yeah. And I'm certainly not going to be able to, because I haven't touched HTML programming in about a decade.
Come on now, Monk.
I'm not. I quit doing coding for the sake of my sanity.
Yeah.
Like if I stuck in that, I was gonna end up in a padded room somewhere, just completely nuts.
That's awesome.
But you're already there. Why haven't they put you in the room yet?
Because I have.
Zan.
Damn it. They haven't had enough reason to do that.
Yet.
That and if they put me in some place, I'm just going to break out.
So one thing that us partnering with a local game cafe here and people being able to play with Travis and I, one of the cool things about it is, number one, they're playing in canon Planetbound, so their characters and stories have become part of the world already. And then anytime anybody plays with Travis and I, it's in canon Planetbound. And then the other part is just playing at a game cafe where people play in person They pay to go into the cafes. Game cafes have, I guess they became popularized in Europe and then came through Canada down into the United States. But they're all over the place. And so the fact that we do one here, that's one of our...
I did predict a while ago that game cafes were going to have much more and more of a impact on the gaming scene.
Yeah, I don't think that you're wrong, and so I think that you'll see Planet Bound popping up in game cafes.
Especially with the advent of things like paid GMs and similar experiences.
Yeah.
Because it's like when somebody asked me, with the current state of things, do you think that theaters are going to go the way of the dodo? And I had said no, because there's way too much of a cultural footprint on the act of going to the movies. What is going to happen instead, however, is I felt it's going to shift to doubling down on the experience rather than doubling down on seeing the latest film.
Yeah.
And if I have to use an example of this kind of thing, basically the model that the Alamo Drafthouse uses. It's the Alamo Drafthouse is very much about the experience of going to the movies rather than the movie itself.
There are quite a few smaller cinemas, especially here in Texas.
Yeah.
That are. I was gonna say that they're part. You're at the movies and part. Hey, let's have a steak while watching a movie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Especially in Texas, this is one of the things I loved about it. The theater experience in Houston was very experiential.
Yeah, there's a Last Chance Theater in my area that every year, around Halloween, does a showing of the original broadcasts of the Evil Dead movies.
Yeah, that thing. I mean, even as far back as Rocky Horror Picture Show, those type of things. That's. I think you're right, Monk. It'll move towards experiential.
Yeah,
rather than
people, even if they've seen Rocky Horror through the film, they're still going to those. They're still going to those events, but it is an emphasis on the word event.
Correct.
I haven't been to one myself, but I've seen my fair share of pictures because apparently I've walked into being a journalist by accident. But I have been to midnight showings of The Room, and you have things like people saying out certain lines, acting in tandem. I'm well aware of the whole flying toast thing with Rocky Horror. People dressing as the characters. Having some mingling during intermissions, all of that kind of stuff. And while that's on the extreme end, it's not far off from the idea of the experience being doubled down. And we do see this with gimmicks like, say, D&D in a castle. If I ever get a chance to do a similar gimmick, I would do some sort of war game in Fort Snelling if I could get away with it.
Nice. Well, even Vampire the Masquerade, when it was at its height, they were doing a lot of in-person events for their gaming.
Mind's Eye is a whole subculture of that game, and still is.
Yeah.
You should ask your boss if he's ever going to do events like that again.
I certainly will, and it might be a little bit easier, since he's not across the damn ocean.
That's
anymore.
Awesome.
But for the longest time, there was that. There was plus there was the way that I've given the pitch to what role playing is, that I basically said it's Tony and Tina's wedding with extra steps, which I think is a much more succinct definition of role playing than what some people try to go for. And if they're in my neck of the woods, I usually say triple espresso with more steps.
Nice.
I get that reference.
Well, yeah, you're the only one in here who's going to because you've been in my neck of the woods.
It's a Minnesotan thing, people. You wouldn't get it.
Oh, got it.
Yeah. And yes, the existence of mini soda implies the existence of regular soda. Let's get that out of the way.
That was never funny. I don't know why people think it is.
As far as those implied the existence jokes, that's definitely on the low end. It's because some people misspell it as mini soda.
That's
Thinking
Because
that they're
they're,
funny, and I'm like, eh.
thinking that they're funny.
Yeah, but they're not. They're about as they're about as funny as a John Oliver sketch.
You.
Oh, I'm going
Monk,
there.
did you really have to bring him up? You could have said they're about as funny as a triple heart bypass, and that would have been better.
No, because I grew up watching way too much stand up, and when I see bad stand up, that finds a special way to offend me.
It offends him because it's not Richard Pryor levels.
Oh,
I've
we're a
referenced
long,
yourself up for
we're
the
a
shit,
long
Mike.
ways from that, Monk.
Yeah, I've referenced the Seinfeld line where Jerry's in a confessional being annoyed that somebody turned to Judaism for the jokes, and the priest is like, "And this offends you as a Jewish person?" No, it offends me as a comedian.
I think I remember that.
Yeah, that's basically my attitude on it. Now with that in mind, do you guys have any plans on putting out a one-shot adventure or something like that down the road? Especially since we do have free RPG day every year.
We do have free RPG day every year, and I definitely have ideas in mind for what that might look like for Planet Bound. But because of the dual leveling system and milestones and that being how adventures are created, it really doesn't lend itself to one shots as adventures. However, an idea of a one shot that includes just a very particular part of Addendum and a very particular people and a very particular setting, well, sure, but nothing that'll be a module. They're just the game's leveling system doesn't lend itself to module. The leveling system creates a module.
I wasn't thinking of module. I was thinking something more along the lines of scenarios, like these scenarios that Zan and I have seen delving into Japanese tabletop.
Okay.
And,
you'll have to give me some ideas of those because they might inspire us.
Well, the thing is that, and Zan can help me fill in the blanks on this. A lot of Japanese tabletop builds itself on these single episodic affairs. In fact, a lot of scenarios can fill up just one page. With just the broad strokes of a given event. I'm not saying go that simple, but it's something to consider. And some of the full-on modules for Sword World, which we did a lengthy campaign of not too long ago, go into this whole thing of having a much more freeform approach to how the adventure is tackled. Especially Demon's Line certainly did it to an extent, for better and for worse. Fairy Garden was another module that really leans into this, as well as Mist Castle. But in each of those, it's not a full on hex crawl, but it's something in between a hex crawl and a traditional dungeon crawl that focuses more on areas rather than the 5-foot step.
Got it.
Zan, I'll leave the filling in the blanks to you on this.
Which blanks need to be filled in?
No, that makes sense, and anything's a possibility. But definitely, we plan on doing some nifty stuff for Free RPG
Like,
Day.
wait, what else do you think I need to fill in there? I think you covered everything. Monk.
You're not gonna let that go, Monk.
But one thing that I am a bit curious about is, and I'm not expecting you to make a full soundtrack or something like that, but when you envision the soundscape of Planetbound, what styles of music, what sort of artists, what sort of genres or subgenres come to mind?
Why not a soundtrack for Planetbound is my question, Monk. So yeah, when we've had actually musicians work on ideas for sounds and soundtracks for this game. To be honest, like there's people who are actively interested in that idea. We definitely love that idea. We have used music in our gaming for all the time that we have gamed. For Planetbound, the specific sound, I don't know. I think it very much depends on where I am in Addendum. Like,
Let's narrow it down. Let's try and get the feel for a soundscape for each of the nations, starting with the Noble Regency.
So that I don't know. What does that sound like to you,
Or
Trev?
Orchestral Soviet Union.
Yeah, there you go.
I suppose in that regard, I was actually going to say the stuff like the Planetary Suite.
Okay.
So, what about the Bakat Ministry?
Oh yeah, that's gotta have like some guitars and some
I was thinking like
electronica.
heavy electronica stuff for that, like
Yeah.
the kind of stuff you'd hear, like Mad Cat producing, like yeah, dude, like
So
yeah, I think
synthwave.
Yeah.
yeah, yep.
Yeah, a fair bit of synthwave. I could see.
Definitely fun.
Yeah, and maybe dipping into stuff like Petarabo or Health.
I don't know if I'm familiar, but
Yeah,
I'll trust you on that. we're old, Buck.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Petarabo leans into synthwave for a bit.
Okay.
Health is a noise rock band that got their start in the LA rock scene. They added the song Major Crimes to the soundtrack for Cyberpunk 2077.
Okay.
They also did the whole soundtrack for Max Payne 3.
Oh, right on.
And instead of trying to do what came before, they integrated what was already present thematically with Max Payne into their style, which I think is just a better way to do this kind of thing.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
But next, of course, would be what would you define the soundscape of the Lodestar?
That's an interesting one. So that one to me feels more grand, more orchestrative, more maybe even deeper tones. Yeah. Yeah, that.
I was trying to avoid John Williams.
No, Monk. If the trope is there, the trope is there. The Lodes,
exactly.
they're just fucking Jedi. Goddamn.
Yeah,
They're badass Jedi.
If I can't go with John Williams, I'll go with Philip Glass, especially the work he did for the Kotze trilogy.
Okay.
And the big reason for that is that style had a very low droning style with elements of orchestral and electronic. I've said this elsewhere, but I find Philip Glass to be a very, very underrated composer. Whether it be his own stuff with Metamorphosis or doing a soundtrack adaptation of the Golden Pavilion, which is a whole other rabbit hole I'm not getting into. especially since some people are going to accuse me of being weebish with that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Monk, you are a weeb. though.
Weeb.
Yeah, but
The
about
accusation is true.
about a although I'd say to those who would call me that, I am capable of far worse, as some people can attest to, including my
Nice.
entire office, who's still paranoid of me. And the fact that I'm still banned from the kitchen during family gatherings.
Oh, sorry.
I'm not. I knew exactly what I was doing. I was getting some good old fashioned revenge. And have you ever heard the Klingon expression that revenge is a dish best served
Yes.
cold?
Best served cold.
It is very cold in Minnesota.
That's great.
But for context, Jeremy, it's because I messed with the cranberry sauce at Thanksgiving. Everybody thought they were eating cranberry sauce. They were really eating red beets.
It's because this man likes to torture people who get on
Yeah.
his nerves.
But when it comes to the Gawarak Nation,
That's a good one. I don't have a particular sound for the Gorak Nation. Maybe something definitely earthy.
Zan, Wardruna.
Vadruna?
Yeah.
I could see Vadruna.
I'll have to check them out.
Vadruna is a Scandinavian band.
Okay.
They do sing a lot in Norse, especially older types of Norse.
Mm-hmm.
One of the songs that I love from Vadruna is it's a song that's essentially a eulogy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It is meant to be a song to, give praise to the dead, essentially. But they use not only are they using historical Norse lyricism, they're also using historical Norse folk instruments.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Things like deer hide frame drums,
Wow.
mouth harps, goat horns,
Mm-hmm.
and we mean like horns made out of goat horns. So like goat horn, double meaning there. But
Send me a link to their stuff.
Yeah.
I will send you a link to their YouTube. How about I do that?
Bart,
No.
if I had to use a second choice, probably the Who. Not the one you're thinking of, not the UK.
The one that's spelled HU.
You're
You're talking about Mongolian throat singing.
Mm.
Yeah, the Mongolian throat singers.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I don't know. I'm not familiar. But yeah, that would definitely be a Gorak
Yeah.
sound for sure.
And the last on the list is, of course, the Hooligans.
Yeah, that's got to be some like electric guitar sounding like real like wild and fun
Like first wave punk.
yeah, maybe first wave punk, something like that. Yeah, that would be good. So my honestly, like my grandest vision of a soundtrack that will never happen, unfortunately, because he passed away now, would be James Horner. James Horner is my favorite composer of all things soundtracks, and every one of them that he's done has been so perfect for the setting. My favorite example of that is Willow. It was just perfect for Willow. And even Krull, for goodness sake, that was perfect. and if any of his soundtracks would sound as anything like Planet Bound, would probably be Krull.
Right.
And
You immediately mentioned Willow, and I've already got the adventuring music in my head.
Okay. Exactly.
I will note, when it comes to composers, if I had to use a third choice, I'd probably bring up the stuff that Ennio Morricone did for Conan.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
If I have to bring up a dream producer for all of this, Monk, I'm going to bring up low-hanging fruit that I deserve to bring up, because fuck you, that's why. Let's just have Hiroyuki Sawano make the soundtrack, shall we?
You're gonna have to send me samples.
Oh my god! I have to send him samples of the best music from multiple anime over the last like decade.
If you named the anime, I would probably then know who you're talking about. But I wish I'm not a big follower of composers.
He is responsible for basically half the OST from Attack on Titan. He did
Okay.
all of the music for Gundam Unicorn.
Okay.
He's done a bunch. Hiroyuki Sawano is he's a fucking god.
Yeah.
He did the opening for No Guns Life.
I mean, I'd take Koji Kondo. Sure, I'd take
Koji
him too.
Kondo's good shit too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, if I want to go with a dream composer for just the hooligans, Zen, would it be cheating if I bring up Daisuke Ishiwatari?
Only if you bring up Daisuke Ishiwatari prior to Guilty Gear Strive.
If not that, then maybe we could bully the duo that does Dematori. So I haven't heard them do anything in a while.
But I shared with you.
Yeah. Perfect.
The song I shared with you specifically is from Sawano's official YouTube.
Okay.
It is a song I think does not get enough focus. It is a song that is the opening to the second season of No Guns Life, where a man who literally has a revolver for a head is the main character. Because anime. And but the song is
Chainsaw Man is Chainsaw Head. You know.
well, but yeah, he at least has a normal head when he's not in Chainsaw form.
That's true.
This guy has a revolver for a head all the time.
Wow.
No Guns Life is actually pretty good. But Sawano has done multiple good songs across multiple anime.
Very cool.
So if I have to choose one composer to compose for for everybody on Adatum for all of the Planet Bound game, it would be Sawano, because Sawano has done military marches. Sawano
and all the things.
Yeah, he's done. He's done like stuff that sounds like it's rustic back in the Badlands type stuff.
Nice.
He's done majestic, heroic, sweeping concertos. That's almost all of the Gundam Unicorn OST at that point. He has done some really fun love songs.
That's
and you can always tell a Sawano song. Always. He's got such a hallmark to the way he composes that you know it's Sawano, but he isn't genre locked, and that's the important part.
That's the important thing. You're right.
Yeah, he does.
Hey, brothers! Travis is a thing called a father, so he's got to go do father stuff.
Aren't you a thing called a father too?
Well, mine are a little older though.
Yeah, I got you. We've been going at this for about 2 hours. About 2 hours. So I won't before we go, I will note to everyone watching, thank you for stopping by, whether you're watching this live or watching the VOD after the fact. The other thing is tomorrow, of course, will be Cloister of the Dice, continuing our run through with the SMG Robotech campaign that we're going through. And well, I will have a couple interviews before and after that. In addition, tomorrow is going to be Geek Watch. The focus is going to be a reconstruction of a certain manga that recently finished. Though we have our own plans with that. I can hear Zan stewing. Monday.
Oh, Hiro Aka, I cannot wait to tear you several new holes.
Monday, I'm going to be doing the final gaming live stream in the current format, because I'm going to be going through the demo for FF16 and taking some pot shots at some people who have made some very bad takes regarding this game.
Yeah.
Some of which we covered in the past, but because these takes still persist, and because I think Zan and I are borderline FF scholars at this point.
Yeah, no
I
joke.
mean, borderline? No, Monk,
Yeah,
we
no.
were already FF scholars prior to making our game. Now that we've made the game, I would call us savants.
Pundits?
No,
No.
no, no, no. I don't want that name anywhere fucking near me. Casimir can suck my dick. No,
That's
no.
awesome.
We are savants. We are we are experts.
Yeah. And of course, this Tuesday is going to be the official debut, as well as a celebration of 10 years of this temple. And I will note this in advance, since Vincent had brought it up. He may be sponsoring that stream, because because we may be able to do a giveaway of his Hiroaka inspired game Super Breaker.
Nice.
So please look forward to all of that. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.